we're back in, whenever you're ready.
Okay. I'd like to shift gears here a little, and Al, you were here for more than 30 years, having been part of the original faculty in '68 and retired a couple of years ago. Pam, you've been here 30 years now, and
This is 32.
so where I'm going with this is to ask you if back in the early '70s or in '68 for you, Al, did you have any idea, did you ever think that this was going to be the career, that you'd maybe be here forever, as it were? And then maybe comment about what kept you here and why it became a career for you, and so on.
So when I came here to this country from India, I had about 7.5 years of teaching experience, teaching English and British literature. And I came here to work on a PhD in English. And when I landed in Chicago airport, my wife came over to receive me. She was already here for a semester at Western studying library science. And she says to me, by the way, I switched you over to the library science department. I said, you switched me over, you didn't even talk to me. Who wants to do that? And she said, Al, it goes real well with your background in British literature and English, and you will be working with books, reading books, writing reviews, and this kind of stuff. It's very exciting. And also, if you pursue this field, you can, this was her vision, you can quickly become an administrator. And I said, who wants to be an administrator? I'm a teacher. And I thought I would teach English, finish a doctorate, and go back and teach English. So I thought I would go back also to India. Then reluctantly, I got into I went into the library school the next morning after I arrived here, and then talked to the chairman, who kind of wondered why I switched from English to the library science department, because she, in front of her, had a copy of the letter giving me admission into the English department. And she said, is it because I was a young fellow, 30 years old, and Mary was like, she was 27. Oh, you young people, you want to be together in school. That's why you're dragging him into library school. And she interviewed me, asked me for reasons why I want to switch and the importance of libraries in education and all that. And I even though I didn't want to be there, I kind of reluctantly put some kind of justification together. And she says, okay, we put you on probation for a semester. Mm-hmm. I said, probation? Yeah, probation. So I was there, and after about 3 weeks, she called me into her office, and she said, you're off probation because you seem to be doing good. I said, yeah, I knew that I would do good. Mm-hmm. But anyway, I finished that. Then my passion was for reference and audiovisual. And so then when the announcement came, I liked it. My real passion was for audiovisual materials and audiovisual technology, including television. So I said to myself, let me go do this for half a year. Then after I started, I was told that there will be somebody hired at the end of the year to do audiovisual. I said to myself, here goes audiovisual. Mm. How do we keep our finger in this audiovisual? But luckily for us, because of the faculty and the push they gave it, the materials came in, and then audiovisual equipment came to us, and then I became the assistant dean and dean over the whole thing. So I didn't have any idea that I would be doing this, except for what Mary used to say, that I would become an administrator. While we were in school, we were waiting outside Waldo Library for the bus to go back to our apartment. And then the director's wife pulled over in a Lincoln, and with the children in the car. And then on seeing the car, the director came out and he was a former Hungarian count, so his wife was driving, he sat in the back. And Mary looked at that and she said, someday, I think I'll come over to pick you up like that, and of course you'll sit in the front, not in the back. But I see you as a director, and maybe we'll be doing this sort of a thing. And her vision came true. Why did I stay here? KVCC, first of all, made me feel at home. KVCC and the faculty were very hospitable, to the extent that most of the time I always forgot that I'm Indian and came from India. They made me feel one of them. Once in a while, you used to kid me saying, "Where are your feathers, you Indian?" And we would laugh. And most of the time, I didn't think, it didn't remind me of my being an Indian. And then every 2 years, there was a challenge, or sometimes every 6 months, there would be a challenge. And so KVCC gave me an opportunity to grow on the job. And of course, the team that I had of the librarians who always supported me and always gave me good advice and helped me grow on the job and develop a leadership style. In the beginning, I used to have a military leadership style because I was in the military. And with Pam's help and Jean's help, and we would sit down and chat, and they were very gracious in helping me grow as a leader. And then I finished my career here because, I retired because we wanted to go and be with our grandkids in the South, the twin grandkids. And so they influenced us to retire. Otherwise, I would have been here working even now. When I look back, there's some things that I always remember, some people I always remember. There was Paul Milliken, who taught me how to handle this projector. And Paul, you were always available for advice, and when Pam and I were working on building the collection, we would come to you, you were chair, and we'd come to you with all these lists, you'd give them to your faculty, they would identify what we should be buying, and we did that. And of course, whenever we needed support for audiovisual or whatever, we would come to you, and we got that support. Then I remember Jack Lotz, who went to Dr. Lake after Hiram Davis left, and said, let's not advertise, let's not look all over the world. There is Al. Al, after Don Houserath left, did all the work, and when Hiram Davis came in, oriented him to the work. And then again, Hiram Davis, as he left, wrote a big memo to Dr. Lake saying the same thing, gave the job to Al. So I remember those people. Then I would have stayed as a director probably, and unless Marilyn pointed out, like she did, that we need to create a learning resources unit and then bring in all the instructional support services into that unit. So it was her vision and her support as the Dean of General Studies at that time. Then Peter Rush, I remember him very fondly, who always gave a lot of support, and being a literary person himself, we would sit down sometimes. He'd call me at 10 at night sometimes, and he'd say, "Hey, Al, you want to come over and we'll watch Mary Hartman, and have a beer?" And yes, I would go there all the way from Portage to Kalamazoo, and we would sit there, and Pat, his wife, would fix us some snacks, and we'd sit on the patio drinking beer, and sometimes going in the family room watching Mary Hartman, analyzing that. So after Peter Rush, again, I had the good fortune of reporting directly to Marilyn when Marilyn took over all of instruction. That was one of my best periods as an employee here because I had this wonderful boss. And then later on she became president, so I had to report to somebody else. And then the last 2 years of my tenure was really the highlight of my career here because I was back reporting to Marilyn. Marilyn, as the president, encouraged me to give up some of my other responsibilities because she said, I give you a new challenge, and the new challenge is you will be the coordinator of planning for the whole institution, which includes the library, the Arcadia, and the museum. And she said, you will have the library because that's your first love and passion, then planning. The rest of the things I'm going to give to others. What do you say? I said, great, I'm going to miss some of those. She said, well, you could always walk around and talk to those people like you always do. She said, I need you in planning. And your challenge, Al, is to improve communication about planning and to bring the budget process and planning process together. And they used to run parallel channels and were not coming together. So I did that for 2 years, and she was pleased at the progress. Had a planning system going. Of course, I had this reputation of creating forms. So this time I said to myself, this form that I'm going to create for planning will not be more than 2 pages. And with the help of Louise, the financial, Louise Anderson, the financial vice president, we accomplished that. And with her help, I brought the two together. And I really used to enjoy doing that and working directly with Marilyn. And of course, then she said, one more challenge, we want to redo the library.
Mm-hmm.
And she has been in conversations with Pam, and she would talk to me. And so then we traveled to some other libraries, and the challenge was, she said, you got to make it a 21st century library. So just the last year of my tenure here, Pam and I worked very closely. Again, we went back to the maps, and then we had to change everything. Pam, like always, came out with her cutouts of models for furniture to scale, and we set everything up, and we worked with the architects. We redid several things, and then I left, and I came back to see the library now. And I really felt good. Again, here is something that we did, Pam and I.
Well, I started in, as I said, I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and I thought, what I really need to do is to try a big town and see if I want to live in a big town. So that's why I moved to the Free Library of Philadelphia. I started work in the Free Library of Philadelphia. But I realized that I didn't like living like this, which is the way you live in a big town with people like this. And you'd ride in the bus from your apartment to your work, and you'd be squashed in like this with a bus. And I didn't like that feeling. And that's one of the reasons why I went to back to my hometown. I thought, I'll save the world. I'll go back to my hometown. I'll live in the town where my parents live. Well, that didn't work out. And then the opportunity for changing my librarianship career entirely, moving into an entirely different field, because academic librarianship is quite different from public librarianship. I think in public librarianship you spend a lot of time trying to please your public because they give you the money sort of very directly. But in academic librarianship, people are there because they need your services, and faculty, you can really help faculty with the work that they do in the classroom. So it's really a lot of satisfaction that you get from that. And I love the Midwest. I was so glad to get over the Allegheny Mountains onto the west side of the Allegheny Mountains. This is a wonderful place to live, and I think Kalamazoo is a wonderful town to live in. The job that I have here at KVCC, man, I can't think. I could do whatever I wanted. I could adventure and do anything that I wanted to, especially because Al gave me the opportunity to do things. I came knowing that I would be doing displays in the library, for example. I had a huge showcase. Remember the time we brought the horse? We brought the medieval armor. One time I had a bowl of fish, because we had Chinese pottery, and I had a fish bowl in the display case. I could do a lot of different things in this job. I was given an opportunity to use skills that I had, like my interest in automation and computers, to use those skills to do display work that I liked to do, to work with people, I liked detail work, and circulation work was that in the beginning. As we moved to automation, that was less important, and other things became more important. My people skills were very important later on, and that's something that Al helped me with. I worked with him on his people skills too, and the two of us, I think, changed the main outlook of the library as a place that controlled things to a place that supported people and supported the students in the college. Alice mentioned a couple of times that we had to redo ourselves, and we did redo ourselves in major ways. First, moving into the main part of the library, then we had an opportunity to take over the upper level of the library where the faculty offices had been, so we became a 2-floor library. And then now we've redone the library again to make it more computer accessible for everybody. And that involved taking a part of the library and moving it to another place on campus, and then moving it back. So that gave me an opportunity to use skills that I really enjoy, organizing things and making. So now this is the 4th library that I've organized here in this one place, even though this is my 32nd year, but I've had an opportunity to do 4 libraries. Not very many librarians can say that was part of their career. And it's just, we have wonderful people here on campus. A lot of my friends have jobs that are not as satisfying. They don't get to work with people who work as much as a group as we do here at KVCC. I came the 3rd year, and there were a lot of people, about 30 new faculty members in the 3rd year, and many of us were single at that time. So we had formed a cohort, a group of people, and every Friday night we'd go off somewhere, and many a bar have I closed at 2 o'clock in the morning. And people don't think about librarians doing that, but we sure do. And with a lot of my friends here on campus, people who are still my friends on campus, and as a matter of fact, one of them is my husband here on campus too. So this has been a family to me, it's been a job to me, it's been a career, it's been a future. It's just a wonderful place.
Great. Any last minute things come to mind before we have to call it quits?
Well, you asked about stories, and it was one of Dr. Lake's birthdays. So Fred Rutherford, Terry Coburn, and I got together, and we said, what should we give him for his birthday? Just the previous week, Dr. Lake had a copy of a citation he received from the state of Michigan, from the Secretary of State's office, saying that he had 12 points on his record, and if he's not careful, he's going to lose his license. So Fred Rutherford is a genius at practical jokes. He said, let's get hold of a bike, a small bike, preferably a rusted old bike, and put 2 training wheels on it and leave it in front of his office when he comes over in the morning. So then the question is, who is going to bell the cat? And we said, we pulled rank, Fred and I, and said, Terry, you're going to do that. And he said, I have a bike, so I'll stay in the evening. And I said, I have my daughter's training wheels that she's not using in the garage, and I'll be glad to bring those. And Fred, you do the graphics. And so Fred went and did graphics and big sign, the 10-speed, 12-point bike. And then Terry installed the training wheels. And we said, Terry, you stay in the evening, and then after Dr. Lake goes home, you put the bike in front of his office with the sign. And Terry said, fine. Next morning when we show up, yes, the bike was there. But then Terry came running to me saying, oh man, the man wouldn't go home till 11 p.m. He was working away in his office. I had to stay till 11 p.m. to put the bike there. All right, the bike was there. And Dr. Lake called you. Dr. Lake called Phil Wilson, because you were involved with the bike trip, to find out who did that. And you guys said, no, we don't know anything. Then he called me. He said, Mr. Sagar, he doesn't call me Mr. Sagar. He's always say, Al. I knew he was calling about the bike. He said, do you know anything about this bike that's in front of my office? I said, Dr. Lake, I don't think so. Did you put it here? I said, no, Dr. Lake. He said, Al, this sign has been made in media services, and you are in charge of media services. What kind of a dean are you? You don't know what's happening in your unit. I said, Dr. Lake, I can't be everywhere all the time. And then he laughed. He said, Al, anyway, ask Terry Coburn to come over and take a picture of me on the bike. So he got on the bike and had a picture taken, had it all blown up. It was in his office for a long time. It's also now in the archives in the library. And he had the bike sitting here for about 10 months in the boardroom. Finally, he called me one day and he said, I think we have had enough of this bike. Can you take it home? So when he was retiring, I pulled out one of these pictures of the bike and had it blown up again and mounted nicely, and I presented it to him at the retirement party. And he decided to pull one on me too. So he and Marilyn got together. One day, they sent Bob Lewis one afternoon to my office downstairs. I had the glass office, that's the office of the reference librarian. And Bob Lewis started measuring. I liked the view of that office, and I could look all over, see what's going on, and get all excited if things are not going on right. Actually, the librarians and the staff were happy when I moved out of there because, I would look at everything from there. Anyway, they came. Bob Lewis came, started measuring things. I said, what are you doing? He said, you have termites. I said, I don't have termites, this is steel. Oh, you got steel termites, the rot that was in the cafeteria along the windows, you have the same thing. I said, show me that. And he couldn't show me, he showed me a little well and said, look at this, look at this bump, that's because of chemical termites. I said, chemical termites? Bob, don't kid me. He says, we are going to break this up. So then I called Bob Chick, who is also in on this game. Bob Chick was the vice president for finance. And I said, Bob, if we are going to break it up, let's break it up only 3 feet. I need the glass. To begin with, why did we build it with glass? And now why do we want to break it up? And then Dr. Lake called me saying, I understand you're having some difficulty with Bob Lewis. What's going on? And I said, Dr. Lake, we need that glass. And he says, yeah, let me see what I could do. And then he calls Paul Jackson saying, why don't you call Al and tease him about this? So Mr. Jackson called me and he says, Al, I saw a budget request for some bricks for the library for your office. Oh, can you tell me what you're doing with that office? Then I figured this is a game that's being played. I started laughing and said, now I know what's going on. And then Dr. Lake calls me back saying, Al, we have a policy that you should not be in direct communication with board members. What is going on? I said, Dr. Lake, enough of this game now. So I remember these stories once in a while. And we used to have laughs, and it was fun. Yeah, I also had a tope for a while. And then it blew off one time between the main building and Redwood building as Pete Rush and I were returning from lunch, and there was a snowstorm. And it blew off, and then Pete made a big deal about it, and I wouldn't tell anybody. I just dried it and put it back on. And he had everybody send me rubber cement through the mail. And I think, rubber cement that would last for 3 years for the whole library, all its departments. That was sent because he got around to faculty, and he called them and said, send him some rubber cement for his hairpiece.
Right. Anything else?
Well, there's a lot more, but it's okay.
Yeah, we'll have to wrap it up.
Would you say that, Frank?
Tell us when we're.
I mean, with the machine design and all that stuff?
Roll
Yeah.
with it.
Well,
And we've only got 6
they just
minutes
made
on
up
tape
titles.
Yeah, but we kept, some of that stayed around for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
For those who take that.
here.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Well,
Okay. We have Frank Southwell and Ed Blahnik, the drafting department, not totally, but the majority of it for a long time. And I want to start with Frank and ask Frank to tell us about your pre-KVCC background and experience and what brought you here.
Oh, okay.
taught in Ionia 3 years, right out of college, taught drafting and woodworking and so forth. And then I decided I needed to change. So I moved down to Western with my wife, and we went to school down here in the summer and the next year, and got a job teaching drafting at Schoolcraft while I was teaching, working on a master's. And then while we were in the area, we liked the area, got a job teaching drafting at Plainwell. I was there 3 years when the college started. So in '68, I applied to teach here and got the job. So that was the progression previous to KVCC.
And Ed, you came here at the beginning of the third year of the college, and I'd like you to tell us about your background and training experience and what brought you to KVCC.
I graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Stout, which was a technical school, industrial arts in Wisconsin, close to Minneapolis, and taught 5 years in Wausau, Wisconsin, and decided to go and look a little bit more broader at a technical school or whatever, and I was working summers as a carpenter, which enhanced my architectural drafting, and I also worked as a technical illustrator in the summer. And then I got my master's degree at Stout also, and this was in '69, '70. And there I did my major work on my on computer drafting, which was just starting, and which really kind of led my career. And I had the type of heard about a job here, and I had the types of things they wanted. They wanted somebody that knew something about illustration. I knew some technical things like kinematics, which is part of machine design. I had some coursework in that, and I also got involved in computers, and that seemed to fit, and I was hired here. And it was an exciting time. I worked in the summer when I was here for an engineering firm, did some building and surveying for them, building design, while I was getting started, and then enhanced my work experience. And I was fortunate, as I think back and talk to you a little bit, I think we had a group of guys that worked together like few, and we had a great team to work with as we progressed through the years.
Super. Well, Frank, you must have had some unique challenges coming in as part of the founding faculty.
Pioneers, Paul.
Okay. And you arrived, I'm sure, as we did in history, with course descriptions in the catalog, but anything like a syllabus or a course outline or anything like that was non-existent. So you became a creator.
Yeah.
Talk, if you will, about
Okay.
those beginning days and starting up a whole new program and curriculum, and what kind of problems and difficulties, what kind of challenges and rewards and
Okay.
satisfactions.
Others may have said it, but we were hired a week before, I think it was a week, maybe 2 weeks before classes started, and met at the Southland Motel and just talked about what is community college and how do you do things, because there were no, the staff was deliberately picked from around the country, so we didn't know each other. And Dale Lake got us all together and talked about what a community college is, and you're right, we had just basically course descriptions, and we had no idea what was going to be in those courses till we actually ran with them. And so, yeah, we really scrambled. And the other thing that Dr. Lake did, and I don't know if it happened in other areas, but in drafting, there were 3 of us full-time, Mickey McWilliams, Dave Dobbs, and myself. We had 1 classroom, 3 instructors, and students were allowed to pick anybody's lecture and anyone else's lab. So we had to work together very closely so that we knew each other's assignments and what was said in lectures so we could help them in labs, because we had literally each other's students. So we really scrambled. Keeping ahead of the students was a real challenge. And because there were 3 of us in one classroom, we started, I believe, at 7:30 in the morning. Some classes went till 10 o'clock at night. I can remember one day I had a schedule like that, or one semester. So we really scrambled to keep going.